Hey everyone, today we're discussing a recent development in public health. The decision by U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to wind down mRNA vaccine development. We'll cover the history of how these vaccines were developed, their applications so far, and then present arguments from both sides of the debate on this move. Let's begin first by taking a look at the history. Messenger RNA, or mRNA, was identified in the early 1960s as a molecule that carries instructions from DNA to help cells produce proteins. Efforts to use mRNA therapeutically started in the 1970s, with researchers working to stabilize it and deliver it into cells without triggering unwanted immune responses. A key milestone came in 1990, with mRNA being injected into mice and leading to protein production in their cells. Through the 1990s and 2000s, advancements addressed issues like instability. And by 2010s, companies such as Moderna were conducting trials for mRNA-based treatments for influenza and cancer. The technology gained widespread attention during the COVID-19 pandemic, with Pfizer and Moderna vaccines authorized in 2020. These vaccines worked by instructing cells to produce a spike protein from the virus, prompting an immune response. Regarding their use, mRNA vaccines have been administered in billions of doses globally, primarily for COVID-19. Current research includes applications for flu and personalized cancer vaccines that target individual tumor profiles. The technology allows for rapid adaptation to new pathogens due to its programmable nature. This brings us to the recent announcement on August 5, 2025. Secretary Kennedy stated that the HHS is initiating a coordinated wind down of mRNA vaccine activities under the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. This involves canceling 22 contracts totaling approximately $500 million, which were focused on vaccines for threats like bird flu and other viruses. The decision is based on reviews indicating that technology may carry more risks than benefits and has limitations in addressing certain infections. Now, let's start by examining the arguments in support of the wind down in greater detail. Proponents, including Secretary Kennedy and various health policy critics, contend that mRNA vaccines have demonstrated notable limitations in efficacy. For instance, while initial data showed reductions in severe illnesses from early COVID-19 strains, they state effectiveness has waned over time against transmission, infection, and emerging variants due to factors like immune printing, also known as original antigenic sin. This is where the immune system becomes biased toward the original vaccine antigen, potentially hindering responses to new variants. Supporters reference compilations of research, including peer-reviewed papers on immune imprinting and on the rapid emergence of vaccine-resistant SARS-CoV-2 variants, arguing that this selective pressure from mRNA vaccines accelerates viral evolution and diminishes long-term public health benefits. Kennedy has specifically highlighted in public statements that mRNA technology fails to adequately address upper respiratory infections like COVID-19 and influenza, advocating for a shift to other vaccine platforms that might offer more durable protection. On the safety front, advocates emphasize potential risk beyond rare adverse events such as myocarditis and pericarditis, which have been documented in post-marketing surveillance, particularly among younger populations. They describe mRNA vaccines as a novel form of gene therapy, introducing synthetic genetic material to instruct cells to produce proteins, warranting heightened caution due to uncertainties in long-term effects. Key concerns include the pathogenicity of the spike protein itself, and they cite peer-reviewed studies showing it can cause systemic harms independent of viral infection, as well as biodistribution issues, with studies indicating mRNA and spike protein spread to distant tissues like the brain, heart, and reproductive organs, and persistence, where studies reveal these components linger in the body far longer than initially claimed, potentially exacerbating toxicity. Additionally, the lipid nanoparticles used for delivery are cited as highly inflammatory and allergenic, with components like polyethylene glycol linked to anaphylaxis and other immune reactions. HHS officials, including Kennedy, have compiled a dossier of these studies to justify the decision, asserting that mRNA poses more risks than benefits after consultations with experts at the NIH and FDA. Supporters further argue that reallocating the $500 million in canceled contracts to alternative vaccine platforms, such as inactivated whole virus, protein subunit, or other non-mRNA technologies, could foster innovation, yield more reliable long-term results, and enhance preparedness for diverse threats like bird flu without over-relying on a single experimental approach. This diversification is seen as reducing dependency on mRNA, which some view as rushed during the pandemic without sufficient long-term data. The move is also framed as achieving significant cost savings for taxpayers by avoiding investments in a technology deemed as inefficient and risky, with HHS prioritizing safer alternatives that align with evidence-based reforms. Finally, proponents address perceived influences from the pharmaceutical industry, suggesting the wind-down combats conflicts of interest, promotes transparency, and redirects resources away from profit-driven agendas toward public health priorities. Now, on the other hand, opponents of this decision argue that it relies on interpretations of data that many experts view as inaccurate or selective, often drawing on discredited or misrepresented studies to justify the cancellations. Critics, including prominent scientists and public health organizations, contend that the HHS's rationale overlooks robust evidence from randomized controlled trials and real-world data, selectively emphasizing rare adverse events while downplaying the vaccine's overall benefits. For example, they point to the agency's use of internal reviews that allegedly mischaracterize mRNA as ineffective against variants or respiratory infections, arguing that such claims ignore the comprehensive meta-analyses and surveillance data showing sustained protection against severe outcomes. They point out that mRNA vaccines have demonstrated safety and efficacy in large-scale studies, contributing significantly to reduced severe illness and deaths from COVID-19. Decades of research preceded their development, with phase 3 trials showing efficacy against symptomatic COVID-19 in over thousands of participants. They cite long-term follow-up data from trials confirming sustained effectiveness, with boosters providing overprotection against hospitalizations during variant waves like Omicron, based on analyses of millions of doses administered globally. Safety profiles monitored through systems like VAERS and VSafe by the CDC indicate that serious adverse events are rare, with most cases resolving without long-term issues. Real-world effectiveness studies, including those from Yale Medicine and the CDC, show that updated formulations maintain high protection against severe disease, hospitalization, and death, even as immunity wanes against mild infection over time. Overall, opponents highlight that billions of doses have been administered worldwide, which they say has saved millions of lives in the first year alone. Critics express concern that halting these projects could impede advancements in treatment for diseases, as well as preparedness for future pandemics. mRNA technology has spurred clinical trials for cancer vaccines, targeting malignancies such as melanoma, lung, breast, prostate, pancreatic, and brain tumors, with promising results. Opponents warn that defunding the $500 million in BARDA contracts, including those for bird flu and other threats, could leave the U.S. vulnerable to emerging pandemics, such as mRNA's speed in development enables quick responses to new variants, unlike slower traditional platforms. This move is seen as particularly risky amid ongoing global health challenges, potentially delaying breakthroughs in immunotherapy. Critics emphasize that terminating partnerships with companies like Pfizer and Moderna ignores peer-reviewed consensus on mRNA's safety and versatility, risking unnecessary deaths and eroded trust in science. This shift, they argue, could stifle ongoing research, delay next-generation therapies, and undermine U.S. leadership in biodefense with long-term consequences for global health security. That's an overview of mRNA vaccine wind down. What are your views on this? Share in the comments, like if it was helpful, and subscribe for more discussions on health topics. Thanks for watching, and stay informed.